Hello, this is Thomas from the project group. What we are going to cover today, very briefly, of course, we give you a short introduction to K2. So what's the solution offering there? Just one slide on TPG for the ones who have not met us before. Then we give a very high-level overview to Microsoft Project Online. I noticed from the survey that most of you are either working with Project Server already, but a fair amount, I would say 30–40%, are not using Project Server or Project Online. So it definitely makes sense to introduce it on a very high level. Then we get a little closer to today's topic. We talk about the project demand or idea management workflow, what options we do have, and the technical component that offers the solution for this webinar is the TPG K2 connector, a joint development effort that enables K2 to talk to Microsoft Project Server. Of course, we go into a live demo. We walk through a simple demand management workflow. And at the end of today's session, we will give you a very high-level picture and insight into what is needed and what is available to design these nice solutions, what are the graphical interfaces, and then we conclude with a Q&A. Okay, with that being said, I hand over to Konstantin, who will give us an introduction into K2's solution offering.
Okay, great. Thank you, Thomas. So since a third of you don't know what K2 is all about, I will just get a few slides here so everybody's on the same page. And about K2 as a company, K2 software enables you to build business process applications which include workflows, enterprise forms, and line of business data without the need to use custom development. We are a company which is already was already founded in the year 2000 in South Africa, but is now sitting in the US, and we have a great partnership with Microsoft. Also, Microsoft is our biggest customer worldwide currently. Apart from that, we have a lot of more than 1,500 customers worldwide in every region, and we have a big investor behind us, and also have a year-over-year growth, which is really significant. And then to our platform itself. So we provide our customers a low-code platform which helps them to create applications without the need of custom development with visual tools. This enables them to develop fast, reduce cost of highly skilled staff, and also enables them to boost productivity, scalability, and go to the mobile world. And this is done not only by giving them a low-code platform, but also combining low-code with traditional BPM. So both parts, low-code and BPM, has its benefits and drawbacks, and we try to combine the benefits with other parts of our platform with K2 and give you a great platform to develop your applications. And the major parts of these are, of course, workflows, and they help you to eliminate silos and connecting your various IT systems with drag-and-drop designers. You're also able to reuse your created workflows across different applications. You can use built-in logic and rules. And there is enterprise class workflows which streamline and automate your processes. The other main area are smart forms. They're all browser-based, so you can use them in any browser on the web, so mobile or desktop browsers. You can build them by using drag-and-drop responsive designers. So that means you build them once and can reuse them on any device and in any form factor. Also, you're able to include line of business and data on your forms, use built-in logic, validate based on rules and checks. And if you like, you can even use offline forms and use them in different third-party solutions. And the core behind all of these are our smart objects, which give you visual configurable connectors to connect those systems at the top right area, but not exclusively. So we offer also various different connectors to industry standards like REST or OData. And with these, you're able to configure a connection one time and reuse it multiple times in your forms and your workflows, and your employees don't need to know about the connections behind in the backend, but only use K2 smart objects as they are working. This helps them and makes them easy to use line of business data. And one last slide on K2 Mobile, which enables you to use native apps on iOS, Android, and Windows devices, online and offline, where you can manage all your tasks, delegate them, check the status, redirect, and also approve, reject, rework them on your mobile device, open your forms there, and even create new process instances on the fly. And with this last slide, I will hand over to Thomas.
Perfect. Thank you, Konstantin, for this introduction into K2. As I promised, I give you one picture and really the elevator pitch on TPG. So we are a company in the market since 20 years, working on project, portfolio, and resource management solutions. So we definitely are on the Microsoft side of the game. And the solutions that we usually build are based on SharePoint, Project Server, and Project Online. So the message for today is, of course, we will have project management at the end of the entire story. So the ideas that we want to capture need to be evaluated. They need to be, let's say, moved forward in a workflow. They need to be approved. But at the end of the day, if you want to implement a great idea, at one point or another, you will have a project that requires resources, some planning, and then we are back really in the, I would say, mostly traditional part of project management. So, idea for today, we want to use Microsoft Project Online and have an idea and demand management workflow built into it that has lots of capabilities and all the powerful connections to other systems that Konstantin just mentioned. So if we want to, for example, connect this idea to a CRM system, or maybe we want to write back to a ticket system, if it's a big idea or a small idea, then all this can be easily done within K2 and the smart objects that we have available there. So finally, the idea that at one time will be approved is going to end up in Project Online. Project Online, for the ones, and we've seen from the survey that I think 29% of you already are using Project Online, which is a fairly high number. For the ones that are on premise, this essentially is the cloud version of Microsoft Project Server. For the ones who do not use Project Server today, the very basic idea of this is that you can still use your Microsoft Project Client for the planning and scheduling of individual projects, but you store them centrally in one central location. You have all the projects there, you have all the resources there, you have a demand and portfolio analytics and time reporting capabilities. And some of the tiles that you see on the bottom of the screen are just built-in functionalities in Microsoft Project Online. I don't cover them in detail today, don't worry, we have lots of other webinars on that. And the very basic story is Project Online is a very nice starting point for, let's say, even small to mid-sized companies, because you save the initial investment into infrastructure and can really use project portfolio management as a service in the Microsoft Cloud. We are going to use this as a technical platform today to then finally execute the project. But at the very beginning, we will have, let's say, the initial task to capture demands and ideas. So what is essential that all this works? And let's say headline for this webinar is the $1 million idea. And so it needs to be simple. Everybody in an organization usually has ideas how to improve, the personal process or a bigger story or a product, or let's say whatever is available in the organization. So it needs to be available for everyone. It needs to be easy and convenient. I think that's a very essential point. So there should be no technical hurdles and no difficulties in entering an idea. A pre-selection definitely is necessary. So not every idea is great. And maybe this is the, let's say, first bullet point to remember why we are going to look into a solution that has idea management and capturing and project management and execution as two different ways of executing the same idea. And the very first step is, again, the capturing of the idea, that a pre-selection is usually necessary, and we don't want to have every idea as a new project in our portfolio. It doesn't make any sense. So the idea capturing is a pre-step, and after it's been selected, we will create the project automatically. This is what we're going to show today. So if the idea is great and it has been approved by what workflow and what cycle ever, the transfer to a project must be easy and seamless. Easy means, yes, I only want to click a button. I don't want to, let's say, type in the same data again. I want to make sure that all the information I captured so far directly and automatically ends up in the project and Project Online. I don't want to lose any information, but maybe I don't need every single piece of detail from the idea. So it needs to be configurable in the sense that I can determine which information from the idea and which data set finally ends up in my project. Of course, the connection between project and idea must be kept. I think this is a very essential point. If you, let's say, have some incentives in the organization or some other bonus model where ideas are, let's say, incentives, and so it's very essential that we see finally which idea turned into a project and which project got started from which idea. If possible, we want to kick back the status and the details from project management to idea management. Just imagine you have a big number of people in different functional areas. They all enter their ideas. And usually, if they never hear back from this idea, it's very frustrating and it's going not to live, let's say, a very healthy life from the idea management side. So if we can make it visible to the idea capturers and idea givers that these ideas turned into a project, the project is in execution already, or it's done, it delivered a certain result, then I think the motivation to capture new ideas is much bigger. So the workflow does not go into a single direction only, it's really a bidirectional workflow, and we will also show this later on when we go into the live demo and the live environment. So how can we bring these worlds together? First of all, workflow and forms control the project through the entire life cycle, from idea to execution to closeout. So it's not a single idea capturing, pressing a button, and then we have a project. No, we control the project workflow through the entire project life cycle by using the K2 forms and the K2 workflow steps. And again, we will see this in the live environment. This enables automation of governance related to moving projects through phases and stages. What does governance mean in this context? It means usually you have certain preconditions to achieve the next gate. Let's say you have a gate-oriented workflow in your, let's say, company. If you want to, let's say, successfully survive gate number 2, you need to have 2 documents approved and maybe 1 entry into a budget database. And the question now is, should people always look into these systems and check the document status and check the budget database and then press a button? Or would it be much nicer if the workflow itself could pull all this information, make it visible to you? And that's again the point where we bring K2, let's say, to the next level, where we say, okay, we can connect to all these systems. We can connect to, let's say, maybe SharePoint document library. We can connect to a budget system. And the moment we get this information transported to you as the user, you can immediately say, okay, I am now able and willing to move this project to the next stage, because in the workflow, I can see that the preconditions have been met. So this is the very basic idea behind that. Of course, there are out-of-the-box capabilities based on SharePoint, forms, and workflows, and maybe for the ones of you who have used it and tried it in the past. Yes, it is doable, let's say, with some, let's say, limited functionality on SharePoint only, but the moment you have more complex workflows or you want to reuse them, you are pretty much lost if you, let's say, build them on SharePoint only. So the very basic idea that we have, if we build a SharePoint only workflow, yeah, we can capture these different ideas down here, and maybe we always have the same actions there. We can approve or decline it usually, and that is mostly what is available in the SharePoint workflow. Later today, we will see that in the K2-based workflows, the actions completely depend on the stage, and they are completely, let's say, independent from the individual status change of the project. So we just start with a very high-level comparison of SharePoint Designer versus K2 demand workflow. So we really work through them, let's say, step by step on a very high level. The forms design capability is very much different between what we have on the K2 Designer against, let's say, maybe InfoPass designers. The workflow designer in SharePoint is mostly text-based. It's okay, yeah, for fairly simple workflows. A graphical wizard with reusability of existing workflows on the K2 side offers much more flexibility there. One of the very, let's say, important drawbacks on a SharePoint only workflow, it can only be sequential. Yeah, it can be one stage after the other. So you have to move through your project lifecycle, which is not in many cases real life. Yeah, with the K2 connector and the K2 workflow, the workflows can directly jump to any stage. Yeah, and if in the middle of the project you need to jump back, maybe to initiation or to project, let's say, estimation, well, then you just do it with this connector and that workflow. And in the SharePoint workflow, you would need to start the workflow with some other drawbacks on, let's say, losing of information. Again, the flexibility in the outcome of an individual stage, yeah, it's 2 in the standard of SharePoint, multiple outcomes, as many as you need on the K2 side. Debugging of a workflow, yeah, we all can code workflows very professionally, and usually our workflows never fail. Yeah, every now and then they do. And then the question is, how do you track it down? How can you see what's going wrong in a workflow? And again, the options that we have on the SharePoint side, you need to write your results to intermediate, let's say, variables and can see them. On the K2 side, you can really step through the workflow and see what's going on. Next point, if you use project management in combination with workflows, you can only build this on fields in Project Server or Project Online. While this is possible, it definitely has a drawback on performance of the system and some natural limits as well. In the K2 world, we can say, yeah, maybe we have certain data sets or information pieces that are stored in the K2 side of the game. We do not need them, let's say, in the project management side of the story. Audit trail, yeah, more technical and security thing. Again, this is very much, let's say, secured on the K2 side. The workflow management, and I think this is really essential if it comes down to a big organization that wants to, on one hand, reuse workflows, yeah, and let's say, okay, we used it in this environment, let's reuse it somewhere else. We want to store central variables, for example. We want to, let's say, build variations and versions of the same workflow and switch them on demand, stuff like that. So last but not least, custom coding. Yes or no? Custom coding usually is needed and possible on the SharePoint side if it goes into a bigger, let's say, technical environment. As Konstantin also said during the introduction, little or no coding is usually needed to extend the built-in capabilities because K2 has a big number of, let's say, connectors, and there is a marketplace that offers additional possibilities to extend your solution. So with all that being said, let's briefly go down one technical slide on what is the TPG K2 connector and why is it, let's say, an essential part of the story today. First of all, it's a bridge between K2 and Project Server and Project Online. It's primarily developed to service the needs of demand management workflow, of course, replacing the SharePoint Designer workflows. What is the very basic idea? And we have a difference between on-premise and online versions. I'm not going to read this to you, you get the slides anyway. But the very basic story is if you want to create a project in Project Online, for example, if you want to switch a status of a project to another lifecycle stage, if you want to set securities on the system, for example, there is an API from Microsoft for Project Server. However, this is very cumbersome and I would say also complicated to program against. So if you want to program directly against this API, you're going to spend a lot of time and pay a lot of, let's say, money and effort just to learn how to use it. The K2 connector is a wrapper around that. And basically in your K2 workflow, you have one command that tells create a project with this information. You hand it over to the K2 connector, and this then takes care of the communication to Project Server or Project Online, gives back the results to you, but you do not have to take care about the technical implementation of these calls. Basically, what we're going to use is K2's ability to interface with REST. So TPG K2 connector offers a REST interface to K2 and uses the standard API from Project Server. That much about technology, and that should be it also for today. Now let's focus back on the business case. As we said before, smart objects are reusable objects in K2 to connect the various systems. The TPG K2 connector now adds the connectivity to Project Server or Project Online, depending on the infrastructure you have chosen for your product portfolio management. So this is what we're going to walk through now. Yeah, we are going to create and capture a new idea. We're going to create a project. We push it into the planning, the execution, and the closure phase. Of course, this changes the life cycle stage of a project in Project Online. The K2 connector in the middle just takes care for the communication from one environment to the other. So before we jump into, let's say, this detailed environment, some high-level information on last words on the connector. Yeah, we are able to create and update projects. We can change workflow stages. We can change lookup table values and so on, so on. But let's better see it. Seeing is believing. So we really jump into our live environment. So to say all that, I go into my Project Online system in here. So just one sample site that we set up for today. And the standard functionality in here, of course, is the overview of projects. So Microsoft Project Server, Project Online in this case, has, let's say, central views on all the projects. This can be a very simple list of all projects like this one, or a more sophisticated one. Maybe I want to see my projects by workflow stage. So in the project management side of the organization, this organization has decided to follow a staged approach for projects. First of all, projects are initialized and they are planned and they are executed. Maybe some of them might be canceled or they go into project completion, again, up to what your workflow demands and how your project lifecycle finally looks like. But the idea now is, how do we get new ideas, new requests into the system? Of course, we could create them in here, but that's not what we want. We want to have a pre-selection of ideas. We want to have some additional data captured maybe, and this is where we're going to start now. And this is exactly what we see in the quick launch menu on the left-hand side. There's an idea registration entry. I'm going to click it. It's going to open on the next page here, and then I directly jump into my K2 environment. So you see it's fully embedded into Microsoft Project Online. No need to switch to another system. I have several activities. In this case, it's one for another project I need to take care of, but we are going to add a new idea into the environment right now. So creation of a new idea offers a form, let's say one of the smart forms that are part of K2. And now the idea would be, we want to have, let's say, resource time entries, let's say, should go to SAP automatically, because today we type it in, and definitely there should be, let's say, more opportunities to have it. Idea description could be something we want to use, blah, 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 whatever we do in here. A justification, it's save time, money, and prevent errors in the manual type in of actuals for today. Proposed start date for this one. Why don't we just start today with this project? Maybe I have some information that later might be reused in the project management side. Yeah, if I have this information and I say, yeah, this should be roughly done within, I would say, maybe 50 days, shouldn't take any longer, I can reuse this information then for my project schedule, or give this as an additional information to my project scheduler. And if they end up with more or less, then we have maybe the first thing to talk about. For the sake of the presentation today, I'm going to select myself as a nominated approver in a real-life environment. This would definitely go, let's say, more by an organizational breakdown structure approach. So maybe this goes to my team lead or my department lead that initially checks and, let's say, approves or rejects the idea. Anyway, whatever is going to happen, the forms here are completely designable, of course, but they can be fully embedded as we have seen. And we will see again later on into Project Online as a simple example. So let me submit my idea. I captured this idea, so far so good. Again, now I changed the role. I entered the idea maybe as a, let's say, functional team member. Let me briefly refresh in here, and then I should see the next thing I need to take care of. So approve idea. Yeah, someone asked me to work on this time entries for SAP. So let me double check this idea. What the idea of this, let's say, team member, and they said, okay, this doesn't look so bad. Yeah, maybe quite interesting, but maybe I say, this is not enough. I want to send it for revision, so I send it back to the idea initiator, and I have a, let's say, standard management comment and say, please, more details. Yeah, so I just dance around this initial decision and say, okay, I have, let's say, some sent back for revision to my team member. Good. In this case, don't get confused because I'm always the same guy. Yeah, in this, let's say, environment here, I wanted to prevent the hassle of, let's say, switching accounts all the time. So now it has been sent for revision. In my role, I'm the initiator right now. I always see very clearly where I am. Yeah, so I'm really in the first stage of, let's say, the ideation process here. It has been sent for revision, and I see, okay, say, more details going here and so on. Finally, I'm going to submit it again. I have a full, let's say, thread of all the comments that have been taken and all the additional, let's say, steps that are necessary to walk through that. Finally, I'm going to submit it again. Okay, my fault, good point. So of course, I want to submit it for approval. I don't give up easily, so I don't cancel it, and I submit it again. So let's shorten this a little bit and say, okay, now that the idea has been revised and I send it, let's say, for approval again, now I'm really the, let's say, approval guy. I'm going to look into this idea as a very first step, as a second step. And finally, I'm now say, okay, if everything looks good, I want to approve the idea first. So that's all I need at this point in time. And I really say, let's go. So, of course, in real life, this takes a lot longer than just 4 or 5 minutes, but in the end, it's all about, you have seen the notification popping up. So all this is, let's say, of course, built on notifications as well. So this might take another second in here, and then the next step should be available for me, which would then be the creation of a project. So the idea looks good now. Yeah, it has been approved through the initial ideation stage. And now we look into the form again and say, okay, we do have, let's say, the name of the idea. Maybe the project name is a little different, and we really call it SAP Integration for Project, or for PPM in general. Start date is today. Okay, whatever we want to do in here, it's a development project. So this is my first grab through into, let's say, the environment of Project Online. I do have different project types, enterprise project types, and this basically selects the content from the schedule, the content of my SharePoint team site, and also the life cycle that this project has to go through. I can pick a project owner from the list of project managers. Maybe I assign it to Thomas here. And finally, I say, I think this would be a good one for IT. Yeah, so the moment I enter all this information, I can use some information that is coming from Project Online or Project Server directly. All the other information up here, for example, has been captured in K2 so far. You see the entire life cycle of the project shown up here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create the project on the Project Online side. This might take a minute or so, depending on the size of the project template I have chosen. Maybe there's a SharePoint team site template with documents, risk, and issues assigned to all that. So at the end of, let's say, the cycle, and I will always get an update down here. It's a little grayed out now. It may be difficult to see, but if you watch very carefully, you will see one check mark showing up after the other. So you really can see, let's say, the TPG K2 connector doing all the work and stepwise walking through this project management exercise of creating this new project. What will be the result of all that? Once the project has been created, we will see it as a very new project here in the initialization phase. So it's really then a new project in my portfolio. And then I have all the options. I can resource load it. I can do portfolio analysis and prioritization of the project. I can do all the global reporting on all these projects and so on. But the very essential piece is, after I checked all my ideas, that I get this project really finally created. Good, so project is progressing right now. Okay, I'm ready, done. So the submit button shows up again because it now is, let's say, finalizing this step also on the workflow side. So what changed so far? Let's have a double check in Project Server. So I'm updating my Project Center view in here. And let's go back to my initial view on the workflows. So the sub integration project is in the first stage. Okay, my fault from before, so for that we are going to use the project and bring it directly into the plan stage. That's perfectly okay what we're doing here. So this is a project now on Project Online, and this is, let's say, has all the functionalities that are available in Project Online. You can see what the project is in the life cycle. You can see, let's say, finally what it's walking through, and you can still use the K2 functionality directly in Project Online. What you see right here is a very nice example of adding K2 forms, smart forms, really intelligent forms that are completely designable into a so-called project detail page, a PDP. If you are using Project Server, Project Online today, you know that you are very limited, let's say, in designing and, let's say, changing the forms that Project Online offers. Here you have full control on the forms, and you can directly work on that, and you can directly go in here and say, no, this should maybe more be done on the operation side, and then you can save this information back directly into the project. So long story short, K2 and Project Online share the same data set. It's the same project with the same master data and the same high-level information. So if I go back maybe into my initial stage here, I can see that my sub-integration project still is in the very first stage. What changed on the K2 side of the game, on the workflow side of the game? So now we have, okay, the project is in the very first stage in here. Let's go in here and say, okay, while we are in this plan stage of the project, I now maybe want to use the workflow from here, and you see it updated from IT to operations. So yeah, the change from project directly is visible in the K2 form. And I can now say, okay, maybe I want to cancel this product. It doesn't make sense anymore, or I want to submit it to the execution stage. And you will notice that these steps, the actions that we have in here, really depend on the stage of the project that we currently have. So they are always context sensitive. And I would now say, okay, looks good. Let's execute this project. So what is this going to change? Again, as this is a simple change of the project status only, again, once the workflow is executed, and again, it might take a few seconds, this should now bring this project from the plan stage into the execution stage. Let's give it a try and refresh the view in here. Perfectly okay. So I'm in the next stage now here. And this is exactly the story that we have in the background. Yeah, from wherever you want to control the state change and the phase stage of the project, we know that all this is possible in Project Server as well. No problem, no doubt about it. But it really depends on the size and complexity of the workflows and how much governance you want to build into it. If you want to make the K2 side of the workflow, check the preconditions, check intermediate results, are the deliverables there for the specific gate, and only then would it be possible to finally execute the project lifecycle. Good. Let's look into the project again. Nothing changed so far. It's still a project in Project Server. The project itself is now sitting in here, and we can look into several of the views on the project. Again, this is, let's say, a very nice thing. For the ones who look very, very carefully, you might notice that we also switched off the submit button in Project Online now. Yeah, so the very basic idea is to really only control the workflow from the K2 side and not offer even the possibility to submit it to the next stage from Project Online. Maybe that's very nitty-gritty detail, but I think it's essential for the entire story because you want to have one overall and one governance workflow and not, let's say, switch between systems. Good, let's just go to the next stages here and really, let's say, follow up on this one. Let me repeat it. So we should now see that this project is an execution stage, perfectly okay. So let's again go into it and you see what's going to come. I can always see where I am in terms of my project workflow up here. Let's wait for the form to get active. A few numbers or a few fields are write protected, of course. Again, this can fully depend on the stage where we are. So finally, we now say, okay, I want to close the project, or maybe I just want to change some master data and update the project. But looking at the time that we spent already, I'm going to close the project now. Again, this might be not too exciting now because again, what we do, we bring this project now into the last stage of the project lifecycle that we have in Project Server. So right now we are in the execution stage. Let's briefly update it here. And we see that the project is still in execution. Okay, we just wait for the workflow to complete. We should give it this 5 seconds. And don't remember, everything we see today is a workflow that in real life goes across several weeks, months, or even years. Yeah, so a state change of a project through all lifecycle stages usually does not happen within, let's say, 25 minutes. So forgive me if it takes a second or more. The project is in closed stage now, which means, okay, in this stage, again, we do a last governance check. Did we create all the documentation for this project? Did we close all the risks? Did we, let's say, clean up the project schedule, for example? And again, all this could be built now into the last step of the K2 workflow stage that we have in here. So we said, okay, the product is in this closer stage. And the very, very last step that we do right now, we approve the project and the project results. So I'm really going into my workflow now and say, okay, project is completed. Maybe I'm the sponsor, maybe I'm a stakeholder that has certain interest in this project, and then the workflow could directly, let's say, be sent to me, and I finally approve the results of this project. Good. So within a very short time frame, we walked through the entire project lifecycle. Of course, I am done with this project now in my work list. Yeah, I have other projects to work on, perfectly okay. But for our SAP integration project, I'm really done now. Again, let me refresh this the last time. And then I see that my SAP integration for PPM has been completed. Well, even before having started, but that's another story. Okay, at the very high level, K2 workflows, Microsoft Project Server, product detail pages, forms, all this goes in a very, very seamless, let's say, user story. And this is essentially what we'd like to transport today. So whatever your role is, maybe on the ideation side, on the approver side, on the planner side, it doesn't matter. You always have the same information available. You have a degree of freedom to build the forms and workflows that you finally need. And at the end of the day, hopefully have the solution that fits to your business and your projects. So what we did, we walked through this workflow, and as you might have seen, we had always different choices, different actions, depending on where we are in the project lifecycle. So very flexible in terms of, let's say, defining what should happen in which stage. And for example, if we, cancel a project here, we might want to kick it back into the ideation phase and revise it, or we really want to cancel it and keep it in Project Online as a canceled project. Yeah, completely up to you. And that's basically the story of today. So how is all this being built? Yeah, we just have seen a form where I entered some information. I just clicked the button and something happened. The product has been created and the stage in Project Online changed. So the very basic 3 components on this are a workflow designer. And you see it's a graphical workflow designer where you pull in individual actions and you have different wizards. You can react on events on the left-hand side. So if something changes on the SharePoint document side, if something changes on wherever, this can be used as a triggering event. And then you can graphically walk through the project and define at a workflow and define what's going to happen when. Yeah, so a graphical designer for the workflow. You have extensive debugging functionalities, yeah, where you have, let's say, different options of telling the system, give me intermediate results, show me the next step, show me the entry parameters, show me what's going on. I know this is very much on the, let's say, technical side, but again, you don't need to code for it. You just determine on what would you like to use from this functionality to optimize and maybe debug your workflow. And last but not least, we have the smart forms design. And you see it's really drag and drop. You have, let's say, controls on the right-hand side. You pull them into your form on the left side. You build some logic behind and tell the button what should happen. Again, very nice and very graphical designer. And the very basic story is it's completely reusable. So if you build a library of forms and of smart objects for your company, you can always reuse them in other workflows, in other applications again, and maybe just do a little tweaking to get back to the same or even a better result. So this is mostly what we'd like to show you today, a nice combination of the powerful K2 workflow, forms, and data entry system together with Project Online for the planning, execution, and controlling of the project, of the ideas that have been approved. So I would then, let's say, stop the demo and the live part, and we can jump to the questions and answers if there are any.